Check, check. Check, check, check. No. Relax, okay? Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of Create Your Own Truth. Today's episode, I thought I would get a little bit into habits. Habits are something that everyone wants to talk about and everyone's trying to do and trying to establish healthier habits or better habits, or maybe move away from habits that no longer serve them or that they're trying to rid of. So I know this is something that I'm super passionate about. Habits are something that I coach all of my clients on. So it's something that I just enjoy talking about. And I am always learning about habits as well in my own life. So I am always taking the advice that I give my clients, and whatever works for me is what I kind of coach them with and see if it works for them as well. So just getting into it, there's 4 top tips that I came up with today that have really helped me and my clients to establish better habits, habits that they are desiring to create in their life, and that will allow them to slowly move away from the habits that they no longer want to keep practicing daily. So again, the 2 kind of go hand in hand. So the first tip, just going straight into it, is to go in with the mindset that you won't be perfect. And I know right off the bat, you want a tip that's going to like make habits easier, but this is one that you have to ingrain in your mind and shift your perspective with, because if you try to aim for perfection and you are telling yourself like, no, I need to ditch all my excuses and I've been making excuses for too long, and whatever wasn't working in the past, it's an excuse and I need to be spot on this time. That is not going to work. So if you go in telling yourself that you can't be perfect with this, so don't even try, then it's going to take the pressure off. And if you do mess up on one day or skip a habit one day, or you don't show up with 100% effort, it already removes the pressure that you failed, because we're not perfect. Humans are not perfect beings, so we can't expect that from ourselves. And you're not failing if you're not showing up with 100% effort. And I've talked about this before in probably multiple episodes, but if you show up with any percent effort at all, even 1%, you're still showing up for that habit, which is still strengthening it. So if you show up with 1% effort, you're still strengthening it. It's when you show up with no effort at all, and especially if it goes on for like a few days, that you're not really working on the habit. You're not showing up for that habit. But as long as you can give 1% effort, take those tiny little action steps forward towards making that habit your new reality, then you're still strengthening it. So that is the first one. And I just want to preface that it does not matter how motivated you are. So if you are like, I am ditching my excuses and I'm super motivated right now and I'm going to be perfect with this, that motivation is going to fade. It's going to fade. This is why we don't rely on motivation. And this is why we can't expect ourselves to be perfect, because the motivation will not last. And then all of a sudden we feel defeated. And when we can't show up perfectly or with 100% effort, we already feel like we have failed. So that is tip number 1. Adjust your mindset to go in imperfectly and just expect that you're not going to be able to show up every single day with 100% effort. Or if it's a habit you're not doing daily, every week or every month, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to show up perfectly. So just remove that pressure from the get-go before you even start. And your journey creating this new habit is going to be so much easier and so much more enjoyable. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to set yourself up for success. So when I think of setting myself up for success, I think of what can I do, even tiny little things that will help out my future self to secure this habit, especially when I'm feeling like I am just not motivated, or I'm extra tired, or I'm feeling lazy, or I just don't want to do it today and I'll pick it back up tomorrow. But even if we're just feeling a little bit lazy, if we don't follow through with something that is important to us, it makes it harder to do the next day. Or if it's like a weekly habit, if you're like, I'll just do it again next week, I'll do it twice next week if I was supposed to do it once this week, and you try to make up for it, it becomes a lot harder to actually show up the next day or the next week because you're not showing up and strengthening the habit. So if you can do little things for yourself to set yourself up for success, like putting things out, that takes like 30 seconds to a minute. Setting out your workout clothes if you are, trying to strengthen the habit of working out, even if it's like a nighttime workout, just having your clothes set out for the entire day ahead is going to ensure that you show up to the gym. Or especially if you're like heading to the gym right after work, set out your clothes the night before, put together a little bag the night before so that you don't have to worry about it in the morning when you're trying to get yourself ready for work. It's one less step to throw on yourself the next day. So it just helps out your future self out a little bit. Even filling up your water bottle the night before, that ensures that you're going to get up and drink your water as soon as you wake up. It is very easy to say, I'll just grab a glass of water the next morning. Like, what's the big deal? I'm not saving any time. But it is the act that is setting yourself up for success to ensure that you don't skip it. So if the water bottle is already filled, yes, maybe you saved 30 seconds the next morning, but you're also ensuring that you follow through with it instead of going straight to the coffee and skipping your water altogether because it wasn't filled up, and it's a lot easier not to grab that glass of water. So those little things can help out your future self a lot. Priming your environment is what it is kind of called. If you've read Atomic Habits, I love that term. Prime your environment to set yourself up for success. Even I've talked about this one before where I set out my vitamins on the counter. If they're in the cupboard or a drawer, it is a lot harder to see them because you can't see through a cabinet. So it's not visible. Make things visible, and it will be so much easier to follow through with a habit, especially when it's a new habit, because we need it to be as easy, accessible, and visible as possible to remember. Because when it is a new habit, it's not ingrained in our mind. And we may think about it a couple of times a day and like, oh yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. But it's not innate for us because it's new. So we need to make it as easy and accessible as possible for us to actually follow through with the habits. So for example, the vitamins, it's a lot easier to remember to take vitamins when they're on the counter right where you maybe have your morning coffee or right where you're going to cook lunch. So make it as simple and easy and accessible and visible as possible so that you actually follow through with your habits. Set things out the night before. Even like if you're trying to journal in the morning, set out your journal, set out a pen. I know it seems so easy to just go into your office and grab that the next morning. But if you have it where you're going to journal and set it out the night before, again, you're going to just sit down and be able to journal without wasting any time or saying, I just don't feel like doing it today. It's right there, right where you have your coffee in the morning. There's no excuse. You're going to follow through with it. So prime your environment, set yourself up for success. Do anything at all that will help out your future self, even if it seems so minuscule and like you're not saving any time at all. It's not just about saving time the next day. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is to make a visual tracker. If you're not someone who is like a list maker or a planner person or a calendar person, I understand. But for me, it is very easy to skip something if you're not like physically checking it off. And you can have a checklist on your phone. I also do that as well, like the ones on the notepad where you can actually check the little box off. That's also a great way to do it. But I do love a good old fashioned list where you can just check off the habits for the day or create a calendar for yourself. Whatever is calling to you as far as like a visual tracker goes, it is going to be so much easier to have a look at the end of the day and be like, okay, let me check off the habits I've done. What do I need to do before bed? And it makes it a lot harder to skip because you're like, I really want that check mark. I want the check mark, all of the habits checked off for the whole day. So let me just get on the floor and stretch before bed. And that way I cross off my third habit for the day or whatever. That's just an example. But having something physical is going to be that visual that you need. Or if you are someone who checks your phone notepad every single day, like I do, I also have checklists on there. Just something where you can physically check it off, and it's going to be so much easier to follow through with. And it's very satisfying. It's just, you want all those little check marks. So, and if you can have it for like the whole month, I do find that that's easier because when I make weekly checklists, I do really well for like a week, but then it only lasts a week. So then I have to like make an entirely new checklist. And sometimes I do, but sometimes I'm like, I'll get to it on Tuesday, and then before I know it, the whole week has passed and I didn't do all the habits that I wanted to. So I have found that hanging up a little calendar on the fridge with like my 3 to 5 habits is a lot easier to follow through for like a whole month because it's already written out for the month. You only have to do it once instead of having to do it every single week. So that's just another tip of mine. Along with that one, because it's like something that you would write down, like the tracker of all your habits, start small. So I know we all have like 20 habits in our head that we want to change and we want to establish, and bad habits we want to rid of, but start small, start with 3 to 5. So especially when you're creating the tracker, have like 3 to 5 only. And then you have to just write out the habits for the whole month and then have your little check marks for each. And it's going to ensure that you're not overwhelming yourself with 20 new habits. That's just setting yourself up for failure, to be honest, because that's trying to change things all at once instead of giving yourself time to adapt. And it's just a lot easier to adapt to 1 or 2 or 3 new changes instead of 20. So it's okay to want to change all of those things eventually, but maybe start with the 3 that are most important to you and that will almost like create a domino effect. So, maybe a few of the habits are kind of intertwined. Well, what is the one that you need to do first in order to eventually get to those other habits? So pick the first 3 and start on those. And then once you really solidify those, like you feel like they are ingrained in your life and you don't have to think about them as much anymore, then you can start adding on the other habits. And the last tip number 4, is to habit stack. Habit stacking is something that gives you a cue so that you remember when to do a new habit. Because like I said, it is very easy to forget to actually do a new habit, even if you have the tracker, let's say, because it's still new. It's not something that is innate in you. It's not natural to your life right now, and it will eventually become so with consistency. But in the beginning, we need a little trigger. We need a little cue in order to remember to actually do it. And you can do this in many, many ways, but like setting an alarm, for example, that's a cue. Having something kind of go off on your phone, or, having a certain time of the day where you do the same habit, but, the reminder on your phone is a lot easier to just remember. It goes off, you go do the habit. But habit stacking is attaching your new habit that you're trying to create to an old habit that you will do without fail. You don't need a reminder to do it because it's a part of your everyday life. And the easiest ones to attach a new habit to are things that we literally have to do every single day. So those include waking up. That is a habit. You're going to wake up, your alarm goes off, waking up, brushing your teeth, drinking coffee if you're a coffee drinker in the morning. If you're not, don't make that your old habit. Eating breakfast. If you eat breakfast, again, it needs to be something you do without fail every single day. If it's a habit, if the new habit is one that you're trying to establish every single day. Eating lunch, if you have kids, you can attach something to their schedule, once I wake my child up, I will do my new habit. So whatever habits you're going to do without fail, pick one of those and then attach your new habit to it immediately after, so that the old habit serves as the cue to do the new habit. So, for example, if you are trying to meditate for 3 minutes every single day because you're trying to prioritize your mental health and change your mindset for the day, so you don't want to skip it any day at all, then you are going to pick a habit that you do every single day. So that would be like brushing your teeth in the morning. So let's say you're trying to meditate for 3 minutes every morning. After I brush my teeth in the morning, I will meditate for 3 minutes. So as soon as you set that toothbrush down, you grab your phone, you put your headphones in, you turn on your meditation app, or you find your meditation, or however you meditate, and you meditate for those 3 minutes. You don't get distracted and say, oh, let me just fold this laundry really quick after I brush my teeth and then I'll do the meditation. No, it needs to be that the old habit is the cue, and then you immediately go do the new habit. Or another one, like, after I finish dinner, I am going to foam roll and stretch. As soon as you finish dinner, you don't do the dishes, you go foam roll and you stretch. So you take the old habit and you stack the new one onto it immediately after. And the new habit or the old habit will serve as that trigger. So it may take a couple of days for you kind of to get used to this, but you will get into the routine of like, okay, as soon as I brush my teeth, all right, now I go meditate. And again, if you kind of need to use phone reminders, I find that those are super helpful, even with a habit stack. Like, put a reminder to go off in your phone every morning for a week until you kind of have it down. After I brush my teeth, I meditate for 3 minutes. So do whatever you need to do to remind yourself so that you are able to develop consistency with your new habit, so that you are able to show up again, even with that 1% effort every day, and show up and strengthen that habit to develop the consistency, which will then make the habit a natural part of your life. And before you know it, you won't even be thinking about it anymore. It will just become a natural part of your life. And you will all of a sudden be that person who embodies those better habits. So I know this is super helpful because I really am someone who is a sucker for habits and learning how to make them easier and more enjoyable in our lives. And I get asked a lot about habits. So I wanted to create at least an episode that was easy to digest with a few simple tips. And I'll probably do more in the future that dive a little bit deeper. But these are kind of my top 4 tips. So go into the new habit with the mindset that you won't be perfect. Show up with at least 1% effort and you're still strengthening the habit. Tip number 2, we're going to set ourselves up for success. Set your stuff out the night before, prime your environment, make it accessible, visible, easy to follow through with. Tip number 3 is going to be create a visual tracker, any kind that's going to work for you, so that you can physically check off your habits daily and see them so they again are visible, and it's going to ensure that you follow through with them. Step number 4 is to habit stack your new habit onto an existing habit so that you have that trigger and that cue to follow through and develop consistency. So test out these tips. Let me know if they work for you. These have been tried and true for me and have really, really helped me solidify habits. And I still use them to this day when I am trying to develop a new habit. So I know they're going to be helpful for you as well. If you want to see more or hear more podcasts on any other habit tips or anything specific to do with habits, let me know. If you're watching the YouTube version, comment below anything specific you want to see with regard to habits, and I would love to create another podcast on that. I do love them, and I just want to help people make it easier to create habits in their lives because, again, life is made up of habits. So if we can find little ways that make it easier and more enjoyable to create these habits, then it's going to be much easier to be consistent with them so that we're helping ourselves out, not fighting against ourselves. So yes, let me know if you want to see anything in particular, and I'd be happy to record that for you. But in the meantime, get out there, try these few tips, and let's create our own truth. See you in the next one.